Alright, so today we're going to be talking about landing gear. Trailmakers has a few different ways of making landing gear, each one with its own purpose to create a stable landing. And first, we're going to talk about tail wheel gear, which, as it entails, means we have two larger wheels on the front of the aircraft and either one small wheel or a ski on the aft of the plane. The aft of the plane is basically the rear end of the plane, and I'll be using that term quite a bit in the future. This set of gear was originally used on older aircraft and is known as the conventional landing gear, as you can see on my DH4 here. Then we have another set of gear, named the tricycle gear, because it resembles one, with two either larger or same size wheels in the center of the aircraft and one set of wheels placed up front. Many airliners use this setup due to the need to stay upright and due to the fact that the bulk of the mass is in the middle of the plane. And finally, I'll be going over other unique landing gear, like that of the B-52, which uses gear in a much different way, spreading the mass over the plane evenly throughout the whole entire aircraft. So, in this ultimate guide, I will walk you through the steps of 1. Determining the right landing gear, 2. Adding your gear, in which we'll go over wheel type, extension, de-extension, movement, and 3. Landing your aircraft. Don't worry, it's not going to be a super long video, and you'll get through it, and you'll make a great landing gear. Keep in mind that I'm just going over the position of the wheels right now, and not how to actually make the landing gear itself. Here, I have 3 separate aircraft, each with the same number of engines, but different masses in different areas of the aircraft, and different lift in different areas of the aircraft. So the first one I'll want to go over is this one right here. You can see the wings are at the front of the aircraft, along with the engines. If we go into build mode, you can see that whenever we turn on our forces, that our mass and our lift are at the front of the aircraft. It's also worth noting that this one's a little longer than the other ones. So with this type of aircraft, typically you would use a tail wheel gear. And this is just due to the fact that the majority of your mass is at the front, and you're going to want both of your wheels at the front where there's most traction. So I just added these 2 wheels parallel with each other, and now I'm going to add either a smaller wheel, which I can use with a go-kart wheel, which I can do like a single wheel right here. I can do another landing gear, but this one would have to be slightly underneath it, like this. That could work. Or you can add skis, which I think I will do. So now that I've added those skis, you'll see here that the aircraft's tail falls back and the front is supported. So it'll show you how this works whenever you're landing too. Often these are on older aircraft because the tricycle gear is a much superior landing gear. However, this still does have its uses, and like in the scenario, you can't really have a tricycle gear since your wings are so far forward. So we're gonna land just like that. The next one we're going to talk about is this one right here, where the wings are sort of in the middle and so is the mass. So if I go into build mode right here, you'll see that the mass is much further back. This is not as long of an aircraft either. And the center of lift is also more positioned in the middle than the other one. So this would mean we would use the tricycle gear. So with the tricycle gear, we're going to want the wheels extended outward more with also like being parallel to each other. And this front one here, you want the same height as all the other ones. You might actually want to put these further back so that you have more support over this this mass right here, because if we have them too far forward, the tail will move backwards because you're just so tall in the front. So if you do something like this, it'll give you a result that looks kind of like this. You can always move them further back. You can have your wings more in the middle, which honestly is definitely a viable option. So as you can see, it's a little finicky. You'll probably have to adjust a little more. I made this pretty quickly, but hopefully you get the understanding of why I want the landing gear here. So let's go ahead and land with this plane too real quick. Just like that. And our next plane here will actually warrant for tricycle gear 2. So with our mass in the back, we're going to want both of our wheels in the back along with that mass so we have max traction. So again, just to make up for the fact that there's a little more mass back here, we're going to slightly move these backwards. Kind of just like this, 2 grid blocks. And as you can see, it's perfectly fine here. And even with its ridiculous look, this thing still flies surprisingly. And I'll go ahead and land this one too. Okay, just pretend we didn't fall off the edge right there. Hopefully, after going over that, you'll know which gear you're going to want to use for your aircraft and why it really matters. Because if you have a gear that's slightly off, your aircraft is going to sway either forward or backward, even sideways even. But yes, I hope that helps you. So now that we're done with that, let's jump into the next thing. So the next thing we're going to talk about is extension and de-extension of the wheels. With the tail wheel gear here, you'll notice that it's kind of hard to retract a wheel that's at your back, which also means you're not going to retract the wheels that are at your front. So with this type of gear, you're often not going to have it retract. And if you do, it's going to be like the other ones I'm about to show you. So the first thing I'm going to want to mention whenever I'm talking about extension, de-extension is that we're going to be using mostly steering hinges and pistons. What I don't want to see you do is add suspension to your landing gear unless your aircraft is very, very heavy. Often suspension will make your aircraft bounce you whenever you land, and you'll end up bouncing backwards, falling, and yeah, you don't want that happening. So for this aircraft, we're just going to add a simple steering hinge, which will be the most basic form of extension and de-extension that you will see. I'm also going to be using the go-kart wheels along with pipes. What using go-kart wheels and pipes allow you to do, it allows you to take advantage of these steering hinges to their max capacity. So see, if we use one go-kart wheel here and I move it to right about maybe right here, I can add these tube elbows, which will allow me to connect it to the steering hinge, in which I believe we only had it one down. So right about here should be a good height. And I'm going to change the red to G, have an angle of 90, and actually change of thought. I'm going to actually add another tube in the middle here to make it a little more clearance room for our aircraft when we're landing. And we're going to turn off the green because we don't need it to sway this way. We're going to do the same thing over here, G for red, or whichever way is going inwards. Turn this off, turn on toggle, turn to 90, and everything else should be fine. And as you can see, whenever we click G, our landing gear, it moves inwards, and you can kind of see our wheels clipping through the wings. Now, often you'll have a little more clearance under your wings, or you'll find a way to kind of hide them. Another way to fix that is to make your steering hinges one more down, sort of like this, and I'll do that to the other side too. And now, whenever we move them in, they won't clip through the wing, and they'll kind of work like that. Now, this is going to add drag, and you're going to want to counter this in some way. There's ways to make, instead of using pipes, you can use, say, the connector rods. Another thing you can do is actually move your wings downwards, or so that you don't have to have this extra grid block right here. All right, now let's move over to the front wheels, which we're going to basically do the same thing. We're going to add these steering hinges here, probably two, since it's a 2x4. Have it go inwards like that. I'm going to use the landing wheels simply because I can put the two close together without having to extend it a bunch. Oh, and just like the first one, I just realized I kind of messed this up, is I'm going to extend this backward one. This is just simply due to the fact that the mass on my airplane is slightly further back. I know it says this right here, but really in Trailmakers, you kind of have to trust what you're seeing with your eyes instead of this whole forces thing, because this airplane flies great, but it will tell me that the lift is too far back, even though it's really stable in flight. So here we have our tricycle gear. I'm gonna take off, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like when we retract. Retracting looks sort of like this, and ideally, like I said earlier, you're gonna have your plane a lot bigger than this, or at least a little bigger than this if you're adding retractable gear. But even with this, they're pretty concealed, and I can extend them out, and boom, we have full gear. Now, there is one benefit to using the landing gear, and that it has built-in suspension in a way. You see on the back here, these wheels are not bouncing a whole lot to my movement, and it's not suppressing anything. So the landings will be a little rougher. But if I do use these landing gear in the front, you'll see how much those wheels are bouncing in the front. And with this aircraft right here, you'll do the same thing I did with the last one, where you'll add the steering hinges and whatever. And again, you can add more, you can add pistons. It really depends on your plane. And there are certain circumstances where you're gonna have to be really creative with what you do. This is just the basics. So now I'm gonna pull out a random plane, and I'll tell you the process as I go through deciding what gear I wanna do and how I'm gonna approach this. So as you can see, I have a lot of guns here. I don't have a lot of room for gear, and I might change that. My center of mass is in the middle of my plane while my wings are further out in front. To me, this is an ideal situation to use my tail wheel gear. So to do that, I'm going to add some landing wheels to the front here. I'm going to extend them with the tube arms, sort of like this. I'm going to place them on the other side, and then I'm going to add a set of wheels on the back here slightly above these ones, which honestly might be difficult to do because I think they're parallel right now. Okay, so the solution I've come up with is that I'm going to have to increase the clearance that these create. Something like this, something like that, and then I can just place that at the back there. And just like that, I have some beautiful tail wheel gear. Now I'm going to show you the first examples I showed you in the video, where I have this first one is kind of complicated. See, I had to fit 3 gear in a tricycle gear fashion in this tiny compartment right here. I guess I can explain to you how I did this. These will go completely out and a little bit in. So when I click I, this will move completely in. And when I click G, a little bit out. So let me show you right here. So when I click G, those second set of steering hinges will push outwards at a 70-degree angle. And those first ones won't move until I hit I, which will completely extend them in. So now I'm going to show you what these pistons are doing. These pistons, whenever I click I, they'll extend out like this. And whenever I click G, they'll extend completely out with the angle. So with this, it's G extended. It's still extended whenever I click G, except it goes straight now. And I click I and they close in, they go inward. And then I just repeat the process again. Now for these front 2 wheels, it's pretty simple. It's just G for up and down. So I'll click G, they go out along with those extending and those 2 steering hinges pushing inward at a 70-degree angle. I click G, they go in, things straightens out. Click I, second set of gear goes in. Second one I'll be showing you is the B52 here, which is pretty simple in itself. So here on this plane, I use these pistons to extend these arms out, in which these will completely extend at a 180-degree angle, because as you can see, I don't have room for these pistons. So these pistons are the ones that extend this inwards and outwards, and then these will extend them outwards this way, pointing to where the arm is. So I'll use one steering hinge to make a 90, the other to make another 90, and these will go from here all the way down, creating a 180 angle. So those extend out, then these get pushed forward and they make a 180-degree angle. Now over here is where I meant whenever you'll have a bigger aircraft and you won't really have to worry about where these are being placed. So here I'm using a lot of flat connectors to make this big old rod to where this go-kart wheel is, and it's just G. It's just G. It extends out. Simple as that. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what you would classify this gear as. It's sort of a tricycle gear because it has the 2 in the front and the 2 on the sides. Like it's 1 in the front and then 2 on the sides because the mass is in the middle of the aircraft. But you still have mass in the back that is not being supported. So you add these set of extra wheels here because you're obviously going to have stuff in the back like this. Yeah, landing gear is as simple as that. It's really not a complicated process. It's just a matter of what type you should do for the aircraft that you have. It can definitely get overcomplicated when you have complex aircraft design, and you're going to have to really compensate for certain things. You might have to remove some pieces to accommodate for the aircraft, the gear that you're adding. But all in all, I hope you liked the video and please subscribe.